Just to give you a quick idea, this is what I mean by using bricks to press everything together, make sure it's a good tight fit. Everything is well glued at all the seams. I went kind of overboard with the bricks on this, but I wanted to make sure it was stuck together very well. There wouldn't be any gaps that water could run down through between the layers. So obviously we look around the outside edges of this. You can tell that there are all kinds of weird corners and angles sticking out where things don't quite align. And if you remember, my door that I'm copying, that I did before, is round on top and only sort of square on the bottom corners. So the next step is to round off that PVC so that you have the shape of the door you actually want. The nice thing about PVC, it can be worked by sanding it, it can be worked by cutting it with a saw, or I prefer to use the power plane. And all of the tools that will work with wood will work as well with this PVC. In fact, the PVC is probably a little bit softer than like your typical pine or something like that you get from a big box hardware store. But it all works about the same and doesn't cause any problems. So another nice thing about this, it's dimensionally stable and it won't rot, which is excellent for this type of project. So just to demonstrate how easy it is to sand, there's some, I don't know, I think that's like 60 grit paper. As you can see, it's already working its way down into that corner. I could do it with that, but that's slow. I had better technology than that. If you want to go even slower, your shore form, like I always advocate for working foam, if you don't have power tools or you have to do a repair or who knows what. As you can see, it's pulling shavings out, it's pulling flakes. It does the trick. It's slow. And of course, a handsaw. Like I said, pretty much like working with pine. Once again, that's slow. The ultimate tool for me is the power plane. As you can see, takes things down quickly. Now I'm going to flip it over so I see the outside skin, so I know exactly the shape I'm trying to copy in this frame. And then I'll just go to town and take everything off the edges. As you can see, we get some corners sticking up here and some roughness. And even this is cut oversized past the pencil line. So I'm just going to trim that right down to the line. For the final shaping, you want to bring the height adjustment here. This is how far out this wheel sticks through the bottom plate, down to the smallest you can get, just because otherwise you get waviness from passing over. But when you bring it down to the finer adjustments, it tends to leave the smoothest finish behind. And that's what you're looking for, is a nice smooth finish. And you can finish it off, the final part, with a file or sandpaper or whatever, just like wood. That's one of the great things. And then, as I said, you just do, once you've got everything roughed out with the power plane does leave, it doesn't do curves very well. So that's where you want to use your sander, your Sureform, sandpaper, whatever, to make a nice round instead of this kind of, you see it from this perspective, see it's kind of lumpy. It's not a nice arc there, and that's what I'm trying to fix. So with the sander, I can smooth that off. The step where you make sure the edges are square the way they need to be this way, and I personally like to have the top of the door angled slightly towards the outside, so any water that would get there would want to run out. With some of the doors, back when I made them out of wood, I actually would take a router and I'd route a channel into the top of the door to divert the rain, kind of like a hidden gutter like they have in cars today. And I'll probably do that with this one as well when I get that far. So as you can see right here, I've taken the window glass and set it into the door the way it's going to fit. This is your rain channel, basically. This is what keeps any rain that might happen to blow in through the screen, run down the glass, or even if you have the glass out of the door and just the screen here, rain hitting it will tend to run down the screen unless it's really wind blown, and it will collect in this channel, and you'll have a couple of holes in this channel to drain the water back through the door. It's the beauty of the Wiley window. It's absolutely low tech and it works. If you noticed in the pictures I was taking at the beginning, the video I showed at the beginning of this, of the door that I have on the teardrop right now, it's outside. I have the window open year round just to keep it nice and ventilated inside the teardrop. Never gotten water inside through this window. Hurricanes, storms, heavy rain, doesn't matter. Nothing will come in. That's the beauty of it. This is just, like I said, just a piece of plexiglass. Bought it Home Depot or Lowe's, and it fits right in. So now we're going to get into the layout of making the inner frame for the Wiley window and plotting what size hole to cut to make sure that we get everything laid out the way we want it. Another step as you're getting into the preparation of this, one of the things you want to do is take a putty knife where you have these pieces of extra glue. I'll scrape off nice and easy. As you can see, I pulled my screws out. And really just for alignment, I'm someone that does not leave the screws in if I can help it on my teardrop or my boats that I've built in the past before I just switched over to foam. I believe that fasteners are something that's going to lead to leaks, rot. They expand, they contract, and then you end up with water getting in, even if it's something sealed like with epoxy. And I don't think fasteners are a good idea. I believe in using glue to hold it all. This scrape, like this door right here, is held together with glue, and the one that I have out in the teardrop right now is just simply held together with glue. All the fasteners have been removed, and I've never had an issue with it feeling like it was going to come apart. My plywood teardrop that I built before, same thing, had no fasteners in it except like door hinges. There was a handful of screws in the whole thing. Everything was glued, and I do the same with the doors, and I could even take some RTV and fill these holes, level everything off for the visual to look better. But you just want to clear up all this extra stuff, that's the flashing that's sticking out, the extra glue that's oozed, in order to be able to fit things together perfectly on the inside. Now we're down to the part of laying out the window and the door. and obviously there's a few things to think about. And one of the big things is this is a Wiley window. This is a total do-it-yourself. They're also called hopper windows. There's another name for them because they're kind of like a feed hopper in a barn, I guess. I'm showing you how I do it. It's my way. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's my way. You might have a different way. You might think of something better than I have ever thought of that you could do it, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm showing you how I do it to give you the idea. Now, the first thing I did is have this piece that was one from when I cut out the door. I just knocked it off quick, made a straight line here. This is the spacer because this is going to be the thickness of the piece that holds the window when it's open. If you remember the video back at the beginning when I showed the door. So that's going to space how far out the window is going to be. And then the other thing you want to remember is you don't want it tight. This window is supposed to be loose and floppy and easy to move around, and then you wedge it with a piece of wood, or as you saw me doing, a wedge of foam, which actually works better because foam is a little compressible. So give yourself some room, but that's the dimension the window is going to be towards this end of the door. This is the hinge side of the door. That's the latch side. I got it right this time. I'm doing good. Because I wanted the latch on the trailing edge of the door, not the leading edge like I did the first time. And this wider part is, of course, because the latch body from the, I got it off of eBay, but it's like the classic hardware. It's fairly thick, and you want that wide frame here and the narrow one for this. So then the next thing you're going to do is you're just going to trace dimensions of your window. This is so you know how big is this piece of glass, plastic, whatever you're using. I mean, I believe it or not, would rather not have windows I could really see through on my teardrops. I like the airflow, but I kind of like to control the light. So you'll notice I haven't peeled the protective plastic off of this one. That's on purpose. It filters a lot better, and I don't like people being able to look in. And in fact, usually I put a t-shirt over the glass and then stick it in the door to control the light even better. So there's the first step in this, and I'll show you the rest of them, and you can argue with them, but this is how I do it. Okay, so once you've got your window size marked out here, you don't want your screen as big as your glass, because the glass will try and go through the screen. So I make everything an inch smaller. So I have 2 foot by, I think, 18, so 24 by 18 inches. I don't know what that is in the rest of the world. And so I measure in 1 inch, so I get a 22 by 16 actual opening, which is nice and generous in the really muggy nights, which I've had hardly any whenever I go camping. It's always cool and a little rainy. You take the glass out completely and you get nice ventilation, and then if you get cold in the night, you drop the glass in. It's that easy, and suddenly you go from a fully open window to 1/3 of that opening. And I figure that ratio entirely on my own. My own thinking is I want the window 1/3, and the other thing is you gotta remember this glass is leaned in. You gotta walk by it every time the door is open. So if you went to a half, now this thing's really sticking inside, and you're going to bump your head on it when you roll over at night and stuff like that. So 1/3 has worked out to be the perfect dimension from my experience over a number of years of camping in my teardrop trailers. So that's why I'm showing it the way it is. Like I said, this is my idea. I don't know what the original, whatever the Wiley hopper window, whatever it is, what they decided on, but I use the dimension of 1/3, which 18 inches. It sticks in 6 inches at the top, because that's 1/3 of 3 times 6 is 18. One other thing to notice if you can see them, I made some pencil lines in here, and they're underneath this lip. That is on purpose. Because let's say I am going to add drain holes, but let's say those drain holes get plugged, leaves, bugs, I don't know, whatever. And this trough fills up. If the outer place where the screen is lower than the inner lip, even if that is full, it will run to the outside and not to the inside. So there's a reason for it. That's why they're all kind of, if you can see them, they're tucked under like this. That's on purpose. So now I take those lines that I made using the ruler to measure in 1 inch and just get a nice straight edge and line them all up, make sure that one of them isn't really wonky from the rest of them. Same thing going this way. I have still not determined if I like a square corner or a round corner, but I've been making mine with round corners, so this one's probably going to have round corners too. I just like the look of it, and I think it gets rid of a stress point in the material. And of course, for tracing underneath, I can use the straight edge of the glass itself. Once I figure out the angle the pencil should be at. So that will be the size of my opening, and then I'll find some sort of round object that I'd like to copy for the corners. And here's my shape. I know if you're a draftsman, you have all kinds of interesting tools that you use for making different radiuses on your pictures, but I took drafting in high school. I've never done it since. I read prints all the time on aircraft, but I never really had to draw anything out. But can like that, gives you a nice rounded corner. Of course, it doesn't work there. I've got to find something else that will work for down there. Or maybe just leave it square. Okay, now we come to actually, because remember how I said this is underneath. I can't cut this now because this is glued in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screw gun. I'm going to drive that through, and then I can pick up my lines on the other side. And even with that, I'll be able to pick it up, draw, and then cut from the other side instead of this side. So like right here, where the corner of the radius is, and do it just a little bit on the inside. So there's one hole to pick up. There's a second one. And these copied on the other side. I'm going to make it easy for me to copy. Because if I cut right here from this side, I can't put the saber saw down in here. It's going to hit the edges of the frame. So by cutting it from the other side, I can cut right at the dimensions I want. Now I'm lining up the holes on this side, where the cut line will actually be the side that I'm going to cut with the saw, saber saw. That. Get an idea of how big this window is, and personally I think the biggest windows you can get are what you want for something that, in my case anyways, this is something I'm using for summer months. I'm not thinking very much about heating it. Normally 2 people in a teardrop is plenty to keep it warm, and if you need more than that, there's always blankets. But we even, the big foam square drop that you saw in beginning of the video. That's made out of 2-inch foam. Actually has literally no wood structure to it except the spars and those plates you saw that the door is shut against. And we've camped in that. It was one night in August in the Adirondacks. It was 40 degrees and the wind was ripping. We threw an extra blanket on and slept like babies and woke up and everything was great. And then we went out and got the kids. They were out there with their tents are getting flattened by the wind, and it was a whole other story for them. But we slept right through it, didn't even know about it. That's the nice thing about a well-insulated teardrop. All right, so this is the line that I'm going to cut with the saber saw. And the trick is save this piece that you cut out. And remember how I said I like to have the light blocked? Stick this behind the clear plastic, and now you have a blank off plate for filtering the light, blocking the light, keeping it dark on the inside if that's what you like for sleeping. When you go to cut, of course with a saber saw, the first thing you do is you just simply drill a hole that you can stick your blade through. And a spade bit works perfectly with PVC. We'll do it on the corner. Now I have a place to start my drill, or my saw, and actually go to cutting. As you're cutting, make sure that you support your waste piece so it doesn't break off on you and maybe tear something you don't want. So you just move the sawhorse underneath, like you can see there. So as you can see, I'm having to shorten the blade here in order to be able to cut that last cut because of the piece that's underneath. Otherwise this punches every time it goes down. So I have rolled the saw so that's all the way at the top of its upstroke. This is a little bit thicker than the material that we're cutting. So put that so it's about flat like that. And then I'm going to break off the tip of the blade so that it will hopefully not punch that ledge underneath. And it works. Just like it's supposed to. There it is. Now we'll just have to take you know, something to scuff these edges, break off all the little peely pieces you get when you cut PVC, and square out the corners with a file, and you're ready to go on to your next step for making a window. The easiest way for breaking the edges is a putty knife or razor. Pull it along. If you've ever worked with PVC pipes, you know there's a tool that you use, which is kind of like a cone with some teeth, and you use that to, I'm not sure what the name of it is. I know in sheet metal work, which is more what I do, it's called breaking the edge, which is taking the sharp cutty parts off so that they won't slice people's fingers if they touch that edge. And in sheet metal work you use a file, but obviously This isn't sheet metal, this is plastic, but same idea. You can even use this to cut this corner out square like I want. There we go. Now the reason you want to drill the drain holes in this, like I talked about, is yes, this will overflow this way because as you can see there's a step here, but that tray full of water, you slam the door, sploosh! Now you just got water all over your bed, your pillow, you're wide awake when you're trying to fall asleep. Drain holes are definitely a better idea. Next thing we have to do is come up with the way that we're going to keep the screen on the window, since anytime you go camping, you know there's going to be bugs and you don't want them getting in while you're sleeping. So we have 24 by 18, and when we lay a screen, you want probably an inch to glue around the outside edge of the inner hole. So if we go 1 inch more in each direction, because remember, our cutout is 1 inch smaller than the window all the way around. So if we go 1 more inch beyond the actual size of the glass, that'll give us 2 inches, which gives us an inch for the screen material to go underneath the frame, and then for the actual frame to be glued to the outside of the door. So in that case, we're going to add 1 inch all the way around, so move that into 1 inch there, move that into 1 inch there. Actually, let's go 2 inches this way, because we want 1 inch all the way around, and 2 inches that way. Check this dimension again, and you can just simply trace the edge of your window glass, and you have the size of your screen frame. And I just glue this right to the outside of the door. If somebody has a better idea, I would love to hear it, because I do my best thinking in the shower, and I've thought about this step a couple times. I can't come up with a better way to do it. And where this is an open source, maybe somebody else can. So that's what I do. Cut this out, cut the hole in the middle of it using the plate that came out of the hole in the door, right here in the middle. So we have the window the exact size. Window screen material will be around it, and then the final glued piece, that's this, goes glued on the outside of the door, gives an extra reinforcement to the edge of the window, plus holds the screen in place, and it's not too hard to get apart with a putty knife if you ever have to change it. I hope. I've never had to do that yet. We'll find out someday. Then you got a layout on the door where this outer screen panel is going to go. So here I have my inner dimension. Since I know that my plastic window itself is 18 inches wide, so there's 1 inch hanging over on either side, and then 1 inch beyond that right here. So since this is 18 inches wide for the glass, I'm going to set my ruler so that I have 20 inches, and my inner opening falls in my dimension, and then I have 2 inches on either side of it. I'm not explaining this, I guess, as well as I could, but basically these are just simple layout lines, so I know where this piece that holds the screen in place. You know, these are just rough things, and this one is 24, so I'll go to 26. Yep. And the same thing, going 2 inches beyond it, just to mark where the edge of the screen panel should be. 26. And same thing here, 26. So now we take the panel that is going to retain the screen, set it roughly within those marks. These are not super precise. I mean, this is just to give me an idea of where to line everything up. And that's looking good in all directions. So then the next thing to do, we take and kind of mark, just so I know where all these locations are going to be. And definitely want to make sure that on this side I will have enough room for my hinges. If I have to, I can cut a little profile, a notch into that, because this dimension right here is set by my door frame and then my hinges, and these are all things you have to think about when you're making a door. You know, the thickness of your door has to fit the thickness of your wall. Now in my case, I have 2-inch thick foam walls, so I need a 2-inch plus or minus thick door, which I can play with the other part that the hinges land on, in or out, to make it all match, which is what I did. But that's what sets everything, and then your gasketing is something you play with as well. Give yourself, you know, a fraction of an inch to have something to squish in place and seal. But that's where this sits right now. Then the next thing, I'm going to put some gravity clamps on here, because I'm going to reach underneath and trace the dimensions of the hole, so I have an idea of where to cut to make this frame fit with the other one, so that the window hole all lines up. With the gravity clamps holding it in place, simply trace. Making sure that you get it nice and dark so you can follow it with the saw. And then of course, same thing as before, drill a hole. Be able to start your saw to cut out the hole. Nothing like a dramatic ending. So remember the previous step much earlier where we were figuring the window glass fit, and I talked about how you want to have a little bit of a gap right here between the edge of the glass and what is going to become the part of the frame for the hopper window. I want the same thing on the other side as well, and with my doors, your door will probably be different. You'll have to figure this a little bit differently, but if you're doing it the way I do, that right there, filling this gap here with another piece of framing right there, is about perfect for what I want for the looseness of the glass, be able to flop around and make it easy to pull in and out, so it's not tight or hard to get in or out. So this is another piece of that, I think they call it 3-inch, but it's really more like, I don't know, 2.5, yeah, it's 2.5 by 1, 2.5 by 3/4. And then what you want to do, this is a 24-inch window, but you actually want to come up 24 inches from this frame, which remember the window sits a little lower than the ledge that I have my tape measure against here. So that pushed in all the way down into that groove. I want to mark 24 inches here. We're going to cut this piece off right here. We don't need anything above that, but we do need that much right now. And then with the cut, it's simply a matter of, I'm going to glue this in place. Probably use some clamps to set it tight when we get to that point. And then we'll have a piece that stands out this way, a piece that stands out this way to catch the glass when it's open. And that will make this all work. Like I said, showing you my way. Wiley window people do it very different ways. This is just mine. So in making the frames that are going to hold the glass when it's open, one critical dimension to know is how deep is it from there up to this face of the door. And in my case, I'm looking at 1 5/8. So I need to remember that dimension for my next cut. Then taking a piece of the waste that's left over from the panel that we're cutting the doors out of and all that other fun stuff. Need to measure a 24-inch long piece. So 24 is here. And if you're doing it my way, it needs to be 7 inches wide, which this is. That's perfect. Let's mark that. Right where we want the end to be. There's 24 inches. And then we took that 1 5/8 inch dimension off the door. So we want to do 1 5/8 on this end. And mark. And same thing on this end. We want to come over 1 5/8, and then draw a line between these two marks to cut our frame edges. And the Wiley style window, these are important because the whole thing we're counting on is the fact that water, even blown with some wind, doesn't like to go around corners. If it hits a surface, it tends to stick because of surface tension and it will run down. And these frames are what keeps stuff from just blowing out to the sides of the window when it's open. So you want actually these to be the stop. Here's the window glass, here's the frame that we're putting. And when it's open, there's a piece that rests against it as well. Wind will hit it, water will get there, and it'll just run down the crack right there. So now I'll demonstrate why that 1 5/8 inch dimension was important. Because that puts this corner right even with that. This is your top end. Remember how I said I like to have 1/3 of the window when it's open. 1/3 of the dimension of this window. As like I said, is 6 inch. It's 18 inches, so 6 inches out. And with 7 inches plus 1 inch of framing for this to rest against when it's open, I get a 6-inch opening at the top. 1/3 of my window opening. These don't protrude very far into the teardrop. When the door is open and I have to walk by it or put things in and out or whatever, or when I'm sleeping, this isn't sticking in and banging my arms or whatever, which to me makes the perfect thing. And then the same thing, this one will go on that side, just like that, and they get glued and there's a framing piece that goes on the edge of this, and I always bridge across. Some people have different ideas, but because I like to use a thinner material for the sides and actually just bridge across the top of these, and it has the added benefit of making someplace to hang your towel to dry during the day, so you can use it a second time when you're camping. So that's my own idea, rather than having this pointy thing stabbing me in the back if the wind swings the door into me. I'd rather have a bar across the top to hit me in the back. It's a whole lot more comfortable. The next part of making your window frame is to measure from that bottom edge right there up to here to the very top corner of this. And I get 24.5 inches, give or take. So I'll cut it at 25. It's always better to go a little longer, and then you can just trim things off to look nice in the end, because this is an odd angle right here to cut. But that is a dimension we need to remember. So 25 inches that way. And then looking at more of your 1x2 piece that you bought, and you're probably, what is he going to do with the rest of it? This is what I do with the rest of it. So at 25 inches, we measure, and we're going to cut it that length. And then we're going to cut this again, but we're going to cut it in half lengthwise. So as I said before, these are 1.5 inches wide, which works out to 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to make a couple marks for my center line, and whatever size material you're working with, it's the same thing. It's going to be half of the total. Doesn't look like I got it right. I didn't. That's 3/4. Those of you in the rest of the world that work with millimeters are probably laughing at me, but I have heard that Airbus works with feet and inches. And one of the reasons they gave is it's more precise. I'm not sure about that, but I heard it anyways. I know here I'm an aircraft mechanic, and when they give me dimensions for things on blueprints for airplanes, they give it to me in decimal inches, taking the inch, breaking it into 10 parts instead of the eighths and 16ths and 32nds and all that other fun stuff. So now I'm going to cut it sort of on this line, and the only face that really matters is this one, the square one. This can be wild and ragged. It doesn't matter as much as you think. You're going to sand it off afterwards and make it look nice. And as you can tell with the wonderful tools I'm using, I'm not going to get a perfect straight line cut that's perfectly clean like I would with a nice table. But I guess this is a lot like my foam kayaks. Precision is not one of my keys a lot of times. There's one of the joys of using, not probably maybe the best tool. The thing actually glued itself back together from the heat, from the friction of the blade passing back and forth through it. But it is splitting apart. Okay, so now I have the two pieces, and I'm going to work them into the frame. So you're going to take each of those pieces you just cut, and you're going to you want the rough side facing in, and the smooth side facing, the square and smooth side facing towards the window. And you're going to glue it together like that. You might probably want to sand or file that edge to make a nice smooth joint. Really doesn't matter, it's cosmetic. But that's just giving you an idea. You're going to have another block just like that over here. And this is what catches the window and any rain when it's in that position and holds it all together. Just a quick video showing how I've got this clamped multiple ways, because that one is kind of important to make sure it is stuck good and tight to the door and everything is tight and square. so the window works correctly. But. Okay, so I've got this member glued in place, cured last night, and now I'm ready to start working the actual Wiley window frame. It's really no right or wrong way. Like, if you care about the pattern on the wood grain on this, whatever, it really doesn't matter. Like, basically, this is the step where we're doing this, and we're going to be gluing these in place. And then you can use clamps, but I just prefer to use screws, and I use one of these, I think they're called Spacks. It's basically a Torx. And then, I mean, a drywall screw, if you have a Phillips bit, would work. I like these because they don't strip. They're easier to get back out. Basically, you want to take and lay, oh, this stuff is cold. There we go. Lay a bead of your construction adhesive that's rated for PVC right in here along this edge, because this is part of your containing the water that might come in through driven rain and things like that. And then another one up along here, because this is what's going to keep everything glued together. It doesn't have to be the heaviest, but you just want to make sure it's complete, because obviously little gaps and things like that might just let rain through, and it really stinks when you're camping to find out you have a leak somewhere you didn't expect. So set that in like that. Get right down into that glue. Nice and good. And I like to use screws to hold everything together, like I said before. Like I said, a drywall screw. The nice thing about this PVC is, like I said before, it works just like wood, which means that screws drive into it like wood as well. Just run these every couple inches. Make sure that this is held in good and strong. Here. And if you're really worried about looks, you can go back afterwards, pull them out, take some RTV, caulking type stuff, like for a bathtub, and fill the holes in, clear it all off, make it look really nice. Like I said, if you're interested in that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here on this side next. And with both of these screwed and glued in place, just give you an idea of now how the window fits. You've got plenty of play, so this can rock around, which is what you want, because you're going to have an inner lip here. Makes it easier for pulling it right out of the door when you want the window completely open, especially if you're lying there in bed trying to do it one-handed. Another reason to set the window as low as possible on the door is, depending on the height of the roof inside your teardrop, you might be able to pull the glass out without having to open the door and lift it out, which is really nice. Or drop it in, same thing, without having to open the door and let a bunch of cold air in if the temperature changes overnight. So that's the way that fits. Go on to the next step. Next step is going to be your frame pieces that the glass rests on when it's open, and same type of thing. You're just trying to line up. This is actually what reinforces this edge, so it's not all floppy like this, and it catches the glass when it's open, because remember, this door is going to be vertical, not horizontal like it is here. Same thing, just lay a bead of glue. Doesn't have to be a crazy amount, but you do want to have as close as possible to a good seal. Obviously, this bead down here, fill in this right there. that. Push it all in there. This is a good one to use some clamps on. Hold everything together. Make sure that glue is good and tight. And then once it's clamped down tight, use my other favorite clamping device, and some screws. Pull it in nice and tight, make it a lot more rigid. And now we know this thing isn't going to go anywhere on us. You get it all put together. I need another battery. Just let that cure like that, and we'll go to the next part. Now, as you can see, I've got the other side set up and ready to install screws to hold it in place. Until the glue cures. On my first teardrop, I actually bought expensive camper windows. I think they were used, but they were still expensive, and I was never happy with them because they're the kind that they slide, and even when they were completely open, you only got not even quite half the window. Whereas at the Wiley window, you get the full window anytime you want, or 1/3 in the position with the glass tipped in and wedged like you saw in the beginning of the first video. Then we go on to the next step. Okay, for the next part, which is bridging the top, as you see I've slid the window glass in. This is what you'll do whenever you want to put it in or out in your camper. You simply drop it in. That's closed. You'll put a wedge right here behind it, hold it shut, or even two if you really want. And open, it'll sit like that. You'll take that same wedge and you'll slide it here. And now your glass, like I said, you get your 1/3 opening right here. It'll give you a nice breeze without the air blowing straight in on you if it's a coolish night, especially if you got a couple of you inside the camper. It helps with the airflow so you don't wake up all soaked in the morning from all the condensation from your breath. What you want to do is you want to measure, and we want to measure these angle pieces. We want to measure right across the top here. And I got 19 1/4. I'm going to take a piece of this material and I'm going to cut a piece to go right across this top here, 19 1/4 wide, and then maybe an inch deep this way. It doesn't matter particularly, it's just don't make it too thin because you don't want it to buckle if you bump it. But this is what keeps these from being flimsy, and like I said, makes your nice bar for hanging your towel so it dries during the day. Once you get that piece cut, I cut this 1.5 inches. I just like the way that looked better. Next thing you do is you're going to measure right here between these two. Do it this way. 17 and an eighth. So that will make a piece using that 1 by 2 going right across here. Boxes this in and makes it solid across, and then afterwards take a saw and files and cut it all so it's a matching angle, so you don't have these odd things sticking up. But so 17. Now we'll just stick it all together here. So first part, of course, is get this glued in to match there. Bead glued there. Bead glue there. And of course to match exactly with the edges of our wedge pieces, or angles that the glass sits against. And of course, pin it in place with a screw. Since that will hold it more permanently than anything else. And same thing on this side. That's all nice and tight. And then come back with our piece to fit in here. I need to file it a little shorter to fit. Let it cut to fit the way I want it to. Now lay my glue. I'll hold it all together. Right in place. Cut this to 1.5 because this piece that I'm working on right now is also 1.5 inches. So having two of them the same dimension works out nicely. Probably looks better too. That laid in like that. Fit just like it was made to go together. Throw some clamps on. These are indispensable. And if you don't have a set and you're going to buy some, Harbor Freight, of course. I'm not a salesman for them, really. I don't get anything from them except for cheap tools. And I know you get what you pay for. I'm somebody that makes my living with a really nice set of top-of-the-line American Snap-on tools. But I price everything out from a Home Depot or Lowe's or Harbor Freight, because there are a lot of people that's not what they have a full set of. In fact, my home set is a lot of cheap stuff. But with this all together now, this is a solid assembly. The window's going to rest back, and basically from this, it's just a little bit of finishing up here, drilling the hole for our door latch. There's a plate that goes on for that, and this is practically done at this point. And so here you go, basically finished Wiley window in this door. This is how it will rest when it's open. This is how it will be when it's shut. I have, of course, the option to completely remove the glass. The only thing that's left really is to show you how the screen goes on, and I'm going to wait till this cures, because it's going to make a mess if I flip it over right now. But basically we have our window frame, our screen frame we made earlier, and we're going to lay the screen over. We're going to put the frame on, trim, and I run usually a bead of RTV, something that comes off easily in case I ever have to change the screen, someone puts their hand through it or something. And that's it. I got 2 holes to drill down here for the trough. I'll show you those finishing steps in another video. And there we go. Just giving you a little bit of a walk around of how it stands at this point. The way the door is going to look as it goes on the trailer. Door latch is going to go through somewhere right about here. The only odd part about it is I have to bend the handle like this to clear the Wiley window part, but that's not something that bothers me. It actually works very well. And it's set up the way I want it. Door has some beef to it. It's not the lightest thing in the world, but it's nice to know it's solid. It's not going to fall apart on you. And here's a better demonstration of glass open. When it's in the vertical position, it wants to stay open. And you actually have to put the foam block behind it to hold it shut because it wants to fall open. And showing you how, if you're a raindrop and you're coming in here, you're going to hit the glass and those edges, and you're going to run down, and you're not going to get inside because water doesn't blow up very easily at all. And if it is having a problem with it doing that to you, you can always wedge it shut. And once again, surface tension and gravity work every time. For finishing touches on your door, one of the things you're going to want is a wedge. So find a piece of foam. You could use this side, or this one's already cut at an angle, so I'm using that. It's just a scrap left over from something. Got your screen installed, your glass set in place. Set the foam there. And just follow that. Now you've got a nice line to cut. Now that my piece is cut, this is how it's going to work. There it is. It's wedged open. And it got cold. Rain came through. Now we want the window shut. Let's see here. There it is. The window is wedged shut. But obviously the door won't be sitting this way, it'll be that way. And like I said, if you really want to, wedge it better, you can make 2 wedges. I find one is usually more than enough. And there it is. And then the last part, fitting the screen. First you take the screen frame, lay it over the door, line it up. And then your screening material, I like to use fiberglass rather than aluminum. It's just easier to work with. It doesn't prick you and stick you and make you bleed the way aluminum always likes to get me whenever I work with it. I don't really know if one's an advantage over the other for strength necessarily. And cut it to fit inside the dimensions of your frame. Once you have it cut, of course you lift everything back out of here. This is a good one to do with your window wedged shut. And not only the window wedge shut, but your cutout set back in the hole. That will actually help support the screen in its layout on the door. Of course, the curl. So, like I said, I usually run a bead of our TV, or I think I did on the other one. And then frame. I may have to shift things around a little, but it's not the end of the world. You can even take a razor blade and just trim around the edges, and of course remembering that this bottom edge is the critical one for the whole thing. And then the last step and then anywhere you got pieces of screen still showing, just run the razor knife right along. And away they go, just like that. And we have finished product. Which will probably last longer than you do. Should serve you for many years.